When I look into your eyes, I can tell that we are feeling the same hurts, hiding the same scars. We both got our reasons for giving up. What could I say that would ever convince you that every moment, all you've been through, is somehow being written by a God of love? There's a bigger story, with a better hero, He's got a greater ending, something only He knows. And the best news is you don't have to always be stronger than whatever comes at you. You're in a bigger story, He's got a better hero. When you look at your mistakes, then it's got you asking, why does God just let it happen? You'd rather be the author of your own life. But can't you see how much you matter? See His love in every page and chapter. If only you could realize there's a bigger story, with a better hero. It's got a greater ending, something only He knows. And the best news is you don't have to always be stronger than whatever comes at you. You're in a bigger story, it's got a better hero. It's not over, the best is yet to come. It's not over, just keep holding on. There's a bigger story, with a better hero. It's got a greater ending, something only He knows. And the best news is you don't have to always be stronger than whatever comes at you. You're in a bigger story, it's got a better hero.
I've listened to that song a few times, and there's so many elements in it that I really enjoy. And I think the first one is it just really speaks to the practicality of the difficulty in life. However, every single one of us are writing a story. That's what we're talking about through this series. And I think there's something that kind of is a game changer. And I wrote it down. It's one of the lines from the songs because it really just spoke to me, and I hope that maybe it will to you. It says that in every moment, all you've been through is somehow being written by a God that loves you. Like, we bump into really hard moments, but the whole while, even if we don't see it, He's right there standing beside us. And as we're kind of moving through some of our defining moments, or the defining moments as pastors and teaching pastors, we have staff, I hope you start to think a little bit differently in light of some of those defining moments in your own life that maybe have been pretty hard. Because somebody wants to rewrite it, or He wants to redeem it in a different way, which is what we're going to be talking about today. But it's really great to have you all with us here. If you don't know who I am, my name is Adam. I'm part of the staff here at Clinton Township. And whether you're sitting in one of the chairs or you're watching online, we're so glad that you are here with us today. We know it's getting nicer out, and there's a lot of things vying for your attention, but the fact that you're here means quite a bit to us, and we are glad that you are here. Do have a couple of things coming up in the next couple of weeks that we would like to cue you in on. The first one is the next week. We are going to be jumping into VBS. If you have signed up, awesome. We've got a couple of hundred kids coming already, and we're practically thrilled that we get to talk to them about Jesus. But if you have somebody that you know, or maybe somebody in your neighborhood, especially that isn't involved in a church, we would love for you to invite them and their children to come be a part of it with us. We think it's going to be a fantastic time for them to hear about Jesus and His message. So we would love to have you or them here. If you want to jump in and volunteer with us for VBS, VBS, stop at the hub out on your way, and they can talk to you about that as well. And then on your way in or on your way out, there's going to be one of these cards with this title, Jump In. The summer, as you all know, can be a little bit thinner. We've got vacations coming up. I'm heading back to New York in a couple of weeks to visit my family, and I know a lot of you are heading to a beach or a mountain or something like that. But that means that it gets a little bit thin as far as volunteers or people to serve in our kids ministry goes, and we would love it if some of you could practically just jump in to help us. If that's something you're interested in or you might be able to do for a week or two, stop back in there. We would love to have somebody to talk with you to see what that look like and how you could be involved. And if you are a guest or you're new, maybe this is your first, second time here, we've never had the chance to speak with you or interact with you, we would love to do that. In that space in the lobby, it's called the Hub, people with those bright orange t-shirts. They'd love to meet you, answer any questions you have, and then we also have a small gift just to say thank you for being here in church with us. Now, before we go any further, we've got a video to watch here that's got some pretty exciting news, pretty thrilled at what's going to be in that, and rather than share it with you, I'm going to let you watch the video. Before we do that, when we go up, stand and greet our neighbors around us, and then we'll come back together and watch that amongst ourselves.
From before 1990 to 2019, God called me and allowed me to lead this place called Kensington with some of the greatest leaders and people I've ever known. And it's been a wild journey, full of beautiful surprises, unforeseen heartbreak, challenges, constant. And if I were to write them all down, I know I would need 3 or 4 books to capture, even to begin to capture those memories. And thankfully, over these years, God has continued to lead the way. And there have always been a great team of men and women to help navigate all those messy and uncertain situations. And the people I've had the privilege to meet along the way, including you, so many priceless and unforgettable faces. And one of those faces is this beautiful man sitting next to me, Craig Mays, Dr. Craig Mays. And a lot of you know him from our Clinton Township campus, where in October of 2020, he agreed to be the interim lead over there at Clinton Township as we continued our search for a permanent lead for Clinton. He held that position for a little over a year. He's been an amazing leader in that role, and so grateful that Adam Karshner is now the head at Clinton Township, and I love your mentoring and pouring into him. But a lot of you probably don't know that Craig was on our staff at Kensington, even in Clinton Township, long before that. We hired Craig back in 2000 to help people grow spiritually in practical ways. Craig was also a teacher on a regular basis at our weekend. The midweek services were incredible, and he served as an elder. And in 2006, when we started our second extension campus in Macomb County, it was called East Campus at the time, it's now Clinton Township, we asked Craig to be the lead teacher for our new campus, which he graciously agreed to do. And then in 2008, he complicated my life. You came to me and said you thought God was calling you to start a church in New York City, and I was half excited and half angry because I loved having you here. But over this years, we loved being able to support you and Chris and give you our full blessing to launch Communitas in New York City. And then, of all things, Craig became the director of the New York City Rescue Mission for years. And Craig has spent these last decade for sure being with the richest of the rich and some of the most influential people in America, and then the poorest and the most downtrodden. But in all of this, Craig has never lost his deep passion for people to know Jesus. And as you know, the elders, in fact, as you don't know, the elders have worked so tirelessly the last few years, keeping their eyes and their hearts open as God was taking Kensington through changes and the person that was going to lead us. And I want you to know very clearly, we're going to continue that search with the help of an excellent national Christian executive church firm. But in the meantime, the elder board unanimously has asked Dr. Craig Mays to take the role as Kensington lead pastor. Craig is going to lead us in our mission to see everyone transformed and mobilized by Jesus. He's shown great wisdom, leadership, and a willingness to follow only Jesus with great humility And I think those are key roles. And I think the other one that I would add is the well-being that you've brought just the last 2 years.
Well, I just want to share with you, Steve, that without question, one of the greatest events of my life was when I was invited to join the staff of Kensington in the year 2000. At that point, I had been in ministry about 20 years. I was feeling very restless, really kind of bored, if I'm honest. And Chris and I sensed that God was leading us into a new direction, and Kensington turned out to be what he had in mind. The two things that stand out were the emphasis on the one, your love for Luke 15, the lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost son, that really defined the DNA of Kensington, and then the global outreach that began to develop. And in fact, the year 2000, you and I took our daughters, dragged them all the way over to India to meet Jaya Sankar. And Jaya in India became our first global partner. And then the following year, it was with Julius. But that trip planted the seeds in my life that I think led us eventually to New York to serve the poor. Wow. So after being away 12 years, in the fall of 2020, it was with great honor that I was invited to come back to serve at Clinton Township in a season of transition. It's been a great reunion with old friends and an opportunity to forge new friendships. But I do want to say that as far as Communitas, because we have so many people in Kensington that pray for our church, that support us, that church is alive and well, that Chris, who's been leading it for the last 10 years, will continue to be the lead pastor there. And I will be serving here in Michigan, and together we've figured out the last 2 years how to make this work, where we've been married 37 years, so we know how to make it work, that we can serve these two beautiful churches, the parent church Kensington and the daughter church Communitas in New York City. The other thing I want to just share with you, Steve, in this moment is that you really are one of my heroes. The first time I heard you cast vision, it was when we were introducing Vision 2020.
Yeah.
You remember that? And it was just a staff and some volunteers gathered together. And I listened to your heart, and you wept over the vision of church planting. And I went home and told my wife, Chris, I will follow this man anywhere. And really, New York City was you. You inspired me. And now coming back to following your footsteps here, I never thought following you would literally mean this, but I am honored. And we're going to move forward. I want you to know that I think the elders have sensed that it's not time to stand still, that we want to build on the firm foundation of your 32 years of amazing leadership. There's much to do in the days ahead. As lead pastor, I am super excited to serve alongside of the elders, the lead pastors of our 6 campuses, who are all extraordinary, and the nearly 200 staff, to continue to effectively minister in a rapidly changing culture. My passion, my personal passion, is to help people to know and follow Jesus. We will continue to pursue the one who is far from God, and at the same time, to effectively develop fully devoted followers of Jesus. And we're going to continue to move out into our local communities, and we're going to stretch our influence to the corners of our planet. We will step with intentionality into this season of theological reformation that is taking place. And in the name and in the wisdom and grace of Jesus, we will be his voice and his hands in the midst of our current cultural upheaval. You know, the legacy of Kensington is immense, yet I believe that the best years are ahead. I am extremely grateful for and deeply humbled by the opportunity to be a part of what God is going to do in and through us.
And I want to just add something to that, which is really fun. I'm also absolutely thrilled to announce that the elders have, and you've come back and you've been working on this, to officially invite Andrew Kim to take the role as lead pastor of the Troy campus, which he has joyfully accepted. I want to thank you for leading that.
And actually, I've only been on the job 4 days, and I already got it done. There's a lot to do. But the reality is that I've gotten to know Andrew over the last year and a half or so, and he's an amazing person. And I'm so excited for Andrew and Robin and their family to step into this role and to lead, because he's going to lead well. He's a great communicator. He has such passion for the community and for the world, and his love for Jesus and for others just spills forth all the time. So we're super excited for Troy campus and for Andrew.
Yeah. So there you got it, guys. Men and women out there serving with us and following Jesus. Craig's our new lead pastor. Andrew's accepted the role as Troy campus lead pastor. I'm so grateful for you, brother, and for Andrew. And I really am excited for the great things ahead. Love to you. Thank you.
First, let me say how excited I am for Troy. I've got to know Andrew over the past 6 months. I'm so jacked for him. They've got a great leader. and I'm glad that he's going to be out there alongside. So then I can't tell you how pumped I am to have Craig. He's been such a help, friend, mentor to me in these past 6 or 7 months. If I haven't stepped in it, just know it's probably because of him and other people on the team. So really appreciative, really excited about where our church is going, and I think that's a fantastic thing that we all get to celebrate. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get ready. We are in week 2 of our Defining Moment series. We have somebody from our teaching team. She's a teaching pastor named Shauna to lead us through her story. You guys are a little bit more lucky, I guess, than the other campuses because we have 2 live speakers telling their own story. I've got to hear a lot of Shauna's heart and her message through this, and she's going to talk about perfection and then kind of build it up in light with a Bible story that's going to be familiar to some of us and then maybe not as much to others, but there's great things in it, a lot of practical application through it, and I think in the end we want to connect it back to that song. Through our whole story, through these moments that are good and bad, man, there's a God that loves us. There's a God that wants to come alongside us and shape both the good and the bad to make us into something that he can use in this world. And we're going to start this out with a video that Shauna has shot. So we're going to watch that together, and then she's going to come up and lead us through today.
Failure is not an option. The relentless drive, the fear. Failure is a part of what it means to be human. But most of us can't bring that into our own personal lives. Whether we fail terribly and promise ourselves never again, or whether we've done most everything right and we're terrified we'll lose everything if we make a mistake. And so we strive for perfection. We strive to please. We strive to achieve. When I was in Bible school, one of the things that we were a part of was this motivational school assembly program. It was a program that got to travel locally and nationally. We would go to middle schools and high schools. We would bring this message of going for your dreams, dream big, you can overcome things, anything is possible, this big motivational kind of thing. But the best part of it, and really the intentional part, was the conversations that we would have afterwards. Those times where you could be sitting in the bleachers and with one-on-one with a student, and they would just start sharing their life. I got to do that throughout my whole Bible school experience. And in my final time, I actually became a leader in that. I remember this one school very specifically. We had been instructed by our director that we were to just come back afterwards. We're at the school, though, and it was incredible. The assembly was amazing. And afterwards, our team is connecting. They are connecting with students, connecting with faculty. It was just an incredible time. And so myself and one other leader, we just said, you know what? We need to stay. This is the meaningful work. This is significant. This is why we do this. This is why we come to the schools. And so we did. We stayed, and it was just amazing. And we were so excited. We got back. We're unloading the truck and the van and everything, and we were just all riding high because of just what an amazing assembly this had been. And so about an hour or so later, I received a page. Not a text or a phone call, but a page. And it was to come see the director in his office. And so I'm thinking, oh my goodness, he's going to come. He wants to hear all about this amazing assembly that we had been a part of. But soon as I stepped foot into that office, it was the complete opposite. You could feel the anger and the tension in the air. And he was irate because we had not come back. And instantly, I knew. I was like, oh my gosh, I have messed up, and I have messed up big time. And it destroyed me. The director did everything that he knew how in that moment to make sure that I would never make a mistake again and that I was going to pay for it. I don't remember how I left the office, but I just beelined for the bathroom. And I just stood there, completely broken, shattered, and just not even knowing what to do. And I stood there going, I don't have anywhere safe to go. Here I am at Bible school. I'm over 1,000 miles away from what probably would have been my safe place, my home where my family was. They lived in another country, and I just stood there going, what happens now? How do you keep going? I mean, there was nothing left in me, nothing that would want to ever step foot in another school to do a school assembly, to just walk out and just join the other students, to be with the people that I had been doing life with for the last couple years. And so I kind of just took a moment. I looked in the mirror. I kind of got to this point where I just said, okay, well, you got to suck it up and get back out there. But you also can't let this ever happen again. My response became, well, you can't experience that again. So let's go the complete opposite. Let's not live in failure or mistakes, but let's make sure we never allow that to happen. My life became this striving, this aspiration for perfection. But then there's like this opposite side. There's this striving for perfection, making sure everything is excellent, everything is perfect. But then there's this side where because you're not, and because of this experience that I failed and the response that I got from that person, that means then since I'm not perfect and I'm not making it, then I must not be of any value. And all of a sudden that failure becomes that defining value of who I am, creates these insecurities. And those seep deep. They seep into all areas of life. They definitely seeped into my relationship with God, but into my relationship with my husband, and as we started a family, and in all the activities and my work and everything, it was always this need for perfection. But since I can't attain that, then I'm always less than. And it's like this internal war. And it traps you.
You've always guided me along a clear path on a rocky road, reaching out a steady hand, a solid place to land. So now I wonder, what was it then that turn your eyes a dark red? It was a look I'd never seen. What you despised was me. So I took the wrath, fell face down upon the path, and that was all for me. I couldn't comprehend how anyone could be so mean. Several years have come and gone, and I've learned to get along, to be the first one to agree, to always be the one to please. And I don't make many mistakes. I'm good at finding 1,000 ways. Always care for what I show, to light be wrong again. I won't be wrong again.
One moment. Just one defining moment created a ripple effect that defined perceptions, character, and behavior. One mistake led to years of striving for precision. One failure led to a journey of unstable perfection. Today, we're going to lean into those moments of our lives that sometimes we'd rather hide away. The mistakes and the failures. And we're going to navigate some of the struggles and the pain, our responses to them, but also how God wants to intervene and redefine our lives. So I'd love to take a moment to pray. Will you join me? God, I pray that each one of our hearts would be opened to hear from you today. That we'd be able to see maybe in a new light the parts of our lives that we've tried to ignore, the pain, the failures, but that we'd step in to what you have for us. And the things that maybe we've held on to that have been defining our lives, that we'd release them and see that you want to define our lives. In your name, amen. Well, good morning, Kensington. It is wonderful to be here with you guys today as we are in week 2 of our series, Defining Moments. And at this time in the service, I do want to take a moment to receive our offering. And when you give your you really are giving to a mission. And that mission is for people to experience the love and the hope of Jesus, which really is a defining moment for so many people. And that happens in so many different ways here at Kensington. Even just last weekend, we had our Hope Water Project 5K, which was a fantastic day. And it was just one of the ways that we are able to bring that hope and love, and it happens through the giving. And so because of that, now a community in Kenya is going to have clean drinking water. But not only that, it creates a bigger impact because that will bring in education and faith communities, and that will be a defining moment for those people. And so on the screen there, you can see all the different ways that you can give, and we thank you so much for those of you who are part of this. And if you are not, we would invite you to jump in and be a part of the mission here through your giving. So thank you so much. And so we all have these moments in our lives that are defining moments because life really is this journey. And in that journey, there can be bumps, there can be some uncertainty, there can be defeat, and there can be failure. Because we all fall short, we all fail, we all mess up. Now that can be just you fail to stop at the store on your way home from work to pick up milk or whatever maybe your spouse has asked you to grab. Or maybe you fail to pay a bill on time. Has anyone done that one? I've sometimes woken up in the middle of the night and gone, oh my gosh. And then I'm like reaching for my phone to try and do it. Or maybe you failed to text a friend back a week later. And you're like, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I am the worst friend ever. Or you failed a test or an exam. You failed at a job interview. You failed financially, in a relationship, marriage, parenting. I mean, if you were a parent, we could probably hang out here all day and talk about all the ways we've failed as parents. But we all fail. We all experience failure. Now, some of our failures are bigger than others, and some have bigger consequences. And failure can leave us feeling defeated, disappointed, angry, sad, frustrated. And it can be because of the failures that we have done, like something we have happened that we were all a part of it, but it can also be because of the failure of someone else. And sometimes it's even both. But many times when we experience failure, it's as if our brain all of a sudden is like the warning lights. The red lights, it's like warning, warning, abandon ship, do whatever you have to get out of there, to do something different, to protect yourself, because we don't like to experience failure. It doesn't feel good. Now, the Bible is actually full of stories of people who failed. I mean, you have Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Samson and Delilah, there's Samuel and his sons, David, and that's just a couple of people in the Old Testament. You keep reading, there's more stories of people basically just messing up. They make mistakes, things aren't going well. And in the Bible, we actually get to read about their experiences and really also the impact that it has on their lives. Because failing is an inevitable part of the human experience. And so today we're going to look at one story specifically, and it's found in the New Testament, and it's about a guy named Peter. Now, Peter, he was one of the 12 disciples. But before he was a disciple, Peter was a fisherman. So Peter had been a fisherman, and he was doing all of that when Jesus actually came by and was like, hey, Peter, come be my follower. And Peter does. He leaves everything of his former life. He forgets the whole idea of fishing, his career, and he goes off and he becomes a follower of Jesus. And Jesus has 12 disciples. But of those 12 disciples, there is a group of 3 who are like the closest to Jesus. And Peter is one of those guys. So, I mean, he loves Jesus. Now, here's the thing about Peter, though. Peter was a little brash at times, a little impulsive. He's the guy that's just going to say what he wants and do what he wants without thinking through the implications. And then afterwards, he's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Like, that's Peter. Now, we're going to pick up the story with Peter, and it's shortly before Jesus is arrested in the garden. And so Jesus is hanging out with some of his disciples, and they're having this conversation. And here Peter is really passionate, and he's really excited because you can almost hear him yelling his devotion to Jesus. And so we're going to read this in Matthew 26. And it says, then Jesus told them, this very night you will all fall away on me, account of me, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee. Peter replied, even if all fall away on account of you, I never will. Truly I tell you, Jesus answered, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. But Peter declared, even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you. And all the disciples said the same. So here we can sense Peter's passion. I mean, he's practically yelling. I mean, he's maybe even a little impulsive, but I actually think he really meant this. I mean, Peter loved Jesus. He was Team Jesus all the way. So he's like, there's nothing that would happen. I'm always going to be for you, Jesus. And he's like, I would die for you. I mean, Peter is passionate. He loves Jesus. But when we continue to read in this chapter, we jump down a few verses, we see that this prediction that Jesus gave actually comes true. So we're going to jump down to verse 69. And here Jesus has been arrested. And it says, now Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him. You also were with Jesus of Galilee, she said. But he denied it before them all. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. Then he went out to the gateway, where another servant girl saw him and said to the people there, this fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth. He denied it again with an oath. I don't know the man. After a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, surely you are one of them. Your accent gives you away. Then he began to call down curses, and he swore to them, I don't know the man. Immediately a rooster crowed. Then Peter remembered the words Jesus had spoken. Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. and he went outside and wept bitterly. As the rooster crowed, Peter remembers the words. I imagine that his body must have just flushed faint, that there was almost this numbness in the realization of what he had just done. He disowned Jesus. It says that he left. That he went and he uncontrollably and bitterly he wept. You can sense the pain, the disappointment that he messed up and he knew it. He failed Jesus. So he leaves, he goes off in despair. He leaves Jesus. He abandons him. He abandons the person that he loves, that he cares about. He abandons the person who loves him. But not only that, this is a pivotal moment. Jesus has been arrested. He's being falsely accused, but Peter leaves. He can't even face Jesus. He knows what he has done. He feels the weight of his failure, so he runs. He goes far off. And from Scripture, we learn that he actually goes back to his old life. He goes back to his life of fishing. And maybe you've felt a similar emotion after a moment of failure. See, many times failure can represent this cinder block that I have here. This cinder block is heavy. It's not pretty. It's kind of awkward. Kind of want to hide it. It's a big weight. It's immovable. But it makes an impact. Our failure, those mistakes, those defining moments, it's like this big weight in our life. And our response to failure is like this chain. See, we all respond to failure in different ways. Now, Peter, he responded to failure by he ran away. He had to get as far away from that cinder block. He needed to escape. He wanted to forget that moment. He went back to his old life. And for some of us, that's what we do. We go as far away as possible. We want to run away. We want to make sure that we never have to see the failure, that we never have to experience that again. Now, some of us, though, we don't run away, but it's almost as if we get chained right to the cinder block. We put up walls. We feel like we're stuck, that we can't do anything. And because of that, then we quit. We give up. But some of us respond kind of like how I did. We want to make sure that we will never experience failure again, so then we try to live perfectly. So whatever that means, if that means we have to carry this with us wherever we go, we'll do it. Maybe sometimes we'll try and hide it, we'll wear it, but we will do whatever we have to, no matter how tiring this gets, because we do not want to experience failure again. So we will make sure that we will live perfectly. But the thing is, no matter how we respond, we're always chained to the failure. Doesn't matter how far away we run, doesn't matter if we get stuck, doesn't matter how perfectly we live our lives, we are still chained to the failure. So I responded in a way to make sure that it would not happen again. I tried to live perfectly. Now, we all have some degree of perfectionism, and that's not like a bad thing. Think about this. You want an airline pilot or your surgeon, you kind of want them to do the very best job possible, okay? Like if they can be perfect, that's what we want. And some degree of perfection can actually inspire us. It can help us achieve our potential. But I think it's also important to know that there is a difference between perfection and excellence, because sometimes those lines kind of blur. I know they did for me. See, a person who is striving for excellence is really giving their best out of a given set of talents, their abilities, their time, their resources. But a person who is struggling with perfectionism is fueled by failure, by pride, with this almost obsessive need to make sure everything is perfect, which really then can result in the harmful neglect of other and good, necessary things. Because perfectionism really is driven by this fear of failure, of not meeting expectations, of facing criticism. And that was 100% me. Even to this day, I think I still struggle. Because unhealthy perfectionism is really characterized by this need to control situations or people. And then people can become extremely picky and preoccupied with making sure everything is flawless, because then even almost perfect is seen as failure. And really, perfectionism can be so destructive. It can lead to toxicity and really damage a person because it leaves you with feelings of unworthiness. There's low self-esteem, which then can lead to sleep problems, eating disorders, psychological distress, and more. But it really becomes a very controlling thing, and you almost get trapped by yourself. It's been really interesting over the last few weeks to be preparing for today, for this service. And as I dove not only into my own defining moment and the years that followed, but really just to see perfectionism in a different light, it was honestly really sobering and heartbreaking to see the years of my life that I was trapped by this chain and the damage that it caused in my own life. Because the thing is, the longer that you live in an unattainable world of perfection, the harder it is, because these chains just become heavier. It's harder. It's a greater weight. Now, we don't see Peter necessarily struggle with perfectionism that we know of. But we do see that he had this response where he ran away. Now, he goes back to his old life. He goes back to fishing. Now, the good news is that that's not the end of Peter's story. And there's a day where he actually has another encounter with Jesus. And so this is after the crucifixion and the resurrection. And Jesus, he heads out to the Sea of Galilee. And on the Sea of Galilee is Peter and a few other disciples, and they're out there fishing. And they end up having breakfast together on the shore. And then Jesus and Peter have this one-on-one conversation. And we read this in John chapter 21. It says, when they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus had asked him a third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. So here on the beach, Jesus asks Peter if he loves him. And he asks him 3 times. 3 betrayals led to 3 affirmations. Jesus did not hold Peter's failure over his head. It's quite the opposite. We actually see Jesus extend love and grace. And he also tells Peter, like, that failure, that does not define you. But so many times we allow our failure to define us. We allow the cinder block to be the pivotal point in our lives, sometimes without even realizing it. And it really can create this distorted view of ourselves, because when we see ourselves as the cinder block, as the failure, then that's how we define ourselves. So I'm a failure, I'm a nobody, I'm just a mess up. I'm never good enough, I'm a disappointment, I'm hopeless. But we are not our failures. Failure does not define us. God defines us. In Christ, we are accepted. We are chosen. We are loved. We are set free. We are redeemed. We are complete. We are made whole. We are forgiven. We are not our failures. Failure happens, a part of our story. But it is not the defining moment of our story, nor is it the last word of our story. So Jesus, he's with Peter on that beach, and he pours his love over him. And he reminds him that he is not defined by that failure. And he does that by refocusing Peter. He shifts Peter's focus. He shifts Peter's focus off of himself. He shifts his focus onto something that's bigger, that's greater. He shifts him to a focus that is fueled by love. But see, many times we are consumed with the failure, or we're consumed with our response, whether we ran away, we put up some walls, or we're trying to overcompensate, we're striving for perfection. We get consumed with the failure and our responses to that. And the thing is, then we're only really living out of this chain. And it gets more tiresome, because the longer we go trying to live a life in response to that, we feel like we can't, because this is what defines us, so this becomes our focus. And when this becomes our focus, it actually creates a distance and space in our lives. Space between us and others, but space between us and God. And God wants to shift our focus. He wants to shift our focus off of ourselves. He wants to shift our focus off of that cinder block, off of the failure. He wants to shift our focus to something that is bigger and greater purpose than us, to a kingdom purpose. We are all invited into this life that is rooted in Him. Faith dependent, through authentic acts of love, a life that moves us towards fruitfulness, that is expressive of a relationship with Him. But He wants to shift our focus, because that's not it. And so we see Jesus do this with Peter. He shifts his focus, but in that He also gives him some instructions. He says, feed my sheep. Now, when He says feed my sheep, He's not literally like go out to the farm, find Mary and her little lamb. That's not what's happening here. It's symbolic of go give people this message, my hope, my love to other people. And really what is so beautiful and so profound about this moment is that earlier in Peter's life, in a moment with Jesus, in a conversation, Jesus had told Peter that he was going to be influential, that he would be foundational in building the church. Now, if I was Peter, at this point, I'd be thinking, well, that's a thing of the past. I messed up. Like, I disowned Jesus. There's no way. He's probably just hoping to survive life. But Jesus is like, no, Peter. Peter, that's not it. I mean, Jesus saw Peter at his worst moment. And He loved him. He loved him, and He let him know, I'm not done with you. I picture Jesus almost taking Peter and looking eye to eye saying, I am not done with you, Peter. And the same goes for us. Jesus is not done with us. It does not matter what has happened, what we have done, whatever failure we have experienced. Jesus is not done with us. Jesus is not looking for perfect people as His followers. He wants real, imperfect people. People who can be changed by His love. When you continue to read the story about Peter, after the ascension of Jesus, Peter goes on to be the main speaker to a crowd of people in Jerusalem that had gathered on the day of Pentecost. And this moment is the beginning of the church. And then Peter actually goes on to be influential in making the church available to the Jews, to the Gentiles, to the Samaritans. Basically, he makes it available to everybody. That promise that Jesus made Peter, that he would be foundational in building the church, it's fulfilled. Peter's failure did not stop what God had planned. And for us, whatever failure, whatever mistake you have made in your life, however you are living in response to that, that is not the end of your story. That does not disqualify you, because God has more for you. Now, when we go back to the beach with Peter and Jesus, really what is so profound about that moment, beyond the future impact that Peter will have on the church, is that we have to remember Peter had run away. Like, he had gone back to his old life, fishing. My guess is probably because he felt some shame. He was embarrassed. The pain of that betrayal. Maybe the insecurity that he could no longer live up to the expectations of what he thought life could be. And maybe you felt that too. But Jesus went and found Peter. Jesus went to where Peter was. He was out fishing. See, Peter didn't have to get to a point in his life where he was like, well, I'm just going to fix myself up a little. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to go on a road trip. I'm going to find Jesus. We can work this out. No. Jesus came to Peter. And he does the same thing for us. Jesus meets us in our failure. He meets us wherever we're at, however big or small the cinder block is, however far away we are, or we've wrapped ourselves up in the chains. Jesus meets us in our failure, in the brokenness, in the cover-ups, in the messiness. He meets us in our failures. He went and found Peter, and then he extended him grace. He said, Peter, this is not who you are. He extended him grace. And Jesus extends us that same grace. His amazing, phenomenal grace. In Romans 3 it says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and all are justified freely by his grace through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus. We all fall short. We all mess up. We all make mistakes. And Jesus will meet us in the mistakes, but he will also then offer us his grace. He meets us there and goes, here, I have something far better for you. Something far better than your idealized imaginations of perfection or your avoidance of running away. Because see, this only enslaves us. This holds a grip on our life. Whether we're living in the fear of future failure or the response of what has happened, this thing, and the longer that we live here, the heavier it gets, the more burdensome, because we're always trying to live in response, whether we're trying to cover it up, we're trying to pretend that it doesn't exist, or we're trying to get as far away. We keep running, but the chain will always be there. But you see, this gift of grace that God gives us, it changes everything. His gift of grace brings us redemption. His gift of grace brings us freedom, and it brings us freedom from the chains of our failure. We are no longer tied to our failure, to our past, to the mistakes. Because of him, it changes everything. I love this quote from Bob Goff. He says, grace means we don't need to airbrush our lives to make them look perfect when they're not. We don't have to pretend anymore. His grace changes everything and brings freedom in our lives. Now, it's definitely been a journey for me to learn not to airbrush my life, to accept grace, the imperfections, and failure. I remember this one time. I was with a coworker, and I don't remember what the mess up was or the mistake. I had done something. I had failed at something. And all I saw in that moment was that now yes, once again, I'm a failure, I'm a loser, I'm nobody, I mean nothing. And this coworker, he took me and he pulled me in real close, and he took my head and he pulled it right up close, and he held it there with his hands on my head and just spoke words of life, words of who God sees me to be. And as he was speaking these words, it was like destroying all of the things that I was thinking about myself, all of the negativity, all of the insecurity, all of the ways that I was devaluing myself. He was speaking these words of grace and love, of who Jesus sees me to be. Another important person really in that journey has been my husband, because this would flesh out in some ways, not just at work, but in marriage and in family and in life. But I've had these people that have shown me that it's okay, that failure is not fatal, and that in that also that God wants to meet me there. That I actually don't have to strive or be perfect to be a follower of Jesus. He's not looking for that. That he actually will come meet me in the brokenness. Even today, I don't think I'd say I've completely figured this all out. And I still kind of get mixed up in striving for excellence because I highly value it. But I've been on a journey of learning God's grace, his grace for me. And that it's okay because he accepts me just as I am.
Jesus accepts us just as we are, failure and all. He loves us. And it doesn't matter what mistake, failure, doesn't matter if we have run away, if we've given up, if we've quit, or if we have tried to live our life to overcompensate, to be perfect, to ensure that we would never experience failure again, because he is not looking for perfect or performed behaviors from us. Because when we do that, we actually miss out on him. And we miss out on him working in and through our lives. Even our worst mistake, no matter how great, does not change God's love for us. And the thing is that Peter had to make a choice. So him and Jesus, they have this moment on the beach. And afterwards, Peter could have been like, wow, well, that was awesome. So glad I got to see Jesus again. And then he could have just been like, I'm just going to go back to fishing. Peter had to make a choice. I mean, Jesus came to him. He gave him his love, the grace, and he said, hey, Peter, I got this purpose for you. But at the end of the day, Peter had to make the choice. Peter had to decide if he was going to let the chain of his failure hold him back and keep him in his old life, or if he was going to release it and step into the new life and the purposes and the grace and the freedom that Jesus had. And we all have that choice today too. Whether your life feels messy and complicated, whether it feels overshadowed by failure or mistakes, or you are gripped by fear or perfection, Jesus is here to remind us of one thing that's very important. That no matter what your life has been, no matter what has happened, that you are loved. That you are loved. And that your failure does not define you, but that he will meet you in your failure and that he has more for you. And that he has this gift of grace that he wants to give us today. But just like Peter, we have to make the choice. We have to choose to step towards him, to run towards him. And all we have to do is say, Jesus, I need your grace. And maybe that's just a small little step, or maybe it's a leap, but to say, God, I can't live in the past mistake or the failure. I can't live in the perfection or the avoidance. I need your grace today. Because in his grace, we find freedom. And we can step into the purposes that God has for each one of us. Will you pray with me? God, I pray for every single person who is in this auditorium and who is watching online today. You know their story, God. You know what it's been like. You know the experiences. You know the points of pain, the moments of failure, mistakes that they have been a part of, the things that have happened to them that they had they couldn't have done anything about it. But I pray more than any of that, Jesus, that they would know how much you love them. And that we do not have to be defined by those moments of failure, moments of pain, but you want to redefine our lives today. That you have this gift of grace. And I pray that we would step into that, we would accept it, that we would say, God, we need your grace. Because your grace changes everything. And that each one of us, whatever it looks like for us, would take a step to run towards you today, to live in the freedom and the purposes that you had for us. In your name, amen.
I've carried a burden for too long on my own. I wasn't created to bear it alone. I hear your invitation to let it all go. I see my soul needs a friend, so I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, oh, oh. You saw my condition, had a plan from the start. Your son for redemption, the price from my heart. I don't have a contest for that kind of love. I don't understand, I can't comprehend. All I know is I need you. I run to the Father, I fall into grace.
God's arms are just wide open. And he says, just run to me. Run to me. And it doesn't matter what. It doesn't matter your reason why you need to. Just run to him. He loves you. And he wants to be a part of redefining your love, your life, the grace that only he can give. It doesn't matter what has happened, what mistake, how you've been living your life. His grace is here for you today. We also want to let you know that our prayer team will be down front. If you'd like to talk with them, to pray with them, please do so. They are here for you. And we hope that you'll come back next week as we continue this series for week 3 of Defining Moments. And that you will come join us on Wednesday night for our midweek service. It's an incredible time to just dive a little deeper, to allow yourself to experience his love in new ways and to grow in your faith and your walk with him. So we'd love for you to come be a part of that. But we hope that you will have a wonderful day and a great week ahead and know that he wants to redefine your life.